Well, great. Well, thank you for inviting me. My name is Jim Musgrave, and I'll just take a second to introduce myself. I'm actually a financial advisor who's been in the business for over 17 years, and also am the president of the nonprofit called Society for Financial Awareness. And so basically, we go out into the community and teach financial education. This is not a sales pitch. This is just pure information, and hopefully that you can apply it to your lives to help you make better financial decisions. So anyway, this is my website, just jimmusgrave.com. I'm just going to, if everybody is logged on to the website, I'm going to give you tons of great information so we can get a lot of stuff. With my website right here, just reduce this. Every quarter I record a market video that explains what's going on in the stock market and the bond markets, kind of explain what's going on. It's always going to show up right here. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be going over tonight is on the Information and Resources tab. So the income and expenses data sheet that you guys have, the financial spreadsheets, the RFactor Questionnaire, all these sorts of things are available on my website. If you want to learn a little bit more about SOFA, I have some stuff here, and periodically as I record more workshops, I'll kind of post them here on the website. So here's what I did on Social Security and retirement some time ago. This is actually the SOFA workshop, and again, you can click on the seminar pages and see all the different topics. So when I was talking to Amit initially, you know, there's over 30 different topics that we could do, and I'm just one guy, and I don't give them all. There's many areas that I don't specialize in, so I can bring in estate attorneys or CPAs or mortgage brokers or whatever. But the one that we're giving tonight, creating your own financial roadmap, is probably the best workshop because it takes the big picture and it helps you to apply all this information to your situation. What my goal is for you guys leaving today is that you have a very good idea on where you are right now in your finances. And I'm going to take you through that financial planning process. As you'll see in a second, there's two different ways you can go about this. You can either do this on your own, and I'm going to give you great resources to I mean, we're in a state of information overload, and somehow we need to narrow down all the noise to get down to what's important, because the most valuable thing we have is time. Nobody has time to deal with all this stuff. So what I'm trying to do is help you accomplish as much as we can in an hour and a half. And so we're going to do that. So the financial roadmap workshop is the best comprehensive one. And how I came up with this was a year ago. There was a big company called the Advisory Board. And I was talking to the HR person. They said, we have a lot of people who don't even know what a financial advisor is and what you guys do and all this kind of stuff. Can you at least talk a little bit about that and sort of a macro financial planning thing? So I kind of came up with this. So anyway, this is the SOFA website, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. Anyway, if you guys could pull out your handouts, in front of you is a Word document. And I'm going to start off with this, and you should have a pen in front of you. And for those of you guys on the GoToMeeting, you can literally type in this Word document or write it down. But this is what it's like Dorothy on the yellow brick road. It's that first step on this long journey. And so the question that you guys, I'm going to ask you, and you write this down, is that if we were to meet here 5 years from today, and you were to look back to today, what would have to happen during that period of time for you to feel happy that you're making progress? So what I want you to do is I want you to take 3 to 5 minutes, and I want you to write down all the things that need to happen in your life in the next 3 to 5 years for you to feel like you're making progress. And what I would do is I'd break that down professionally and also break it down personally. If you want to throw in fitness goals, that's great. I have a habit of not achieving my fitness goals, but the professional and the personal ones I typically do at the end of the year. So take a few minutes And I'd like you to jot down the things that need to happen in the next 3 to 5 years for you to feel like you're really making progress in life. Because every single thing that we're going to be talking about over the next hour and a half is going to be influenced by what you write on your piece of paper in the next 3 to 5 minutes. So this is an extremely important thing that you do. So I'll just give you some time to do that, and I'll stop talking for a few minutes.
And so maybe 100 to 120 something or that faculty. So basically, Thursday and Saturday session against each other. Yeah. So we can, let's just say for the purpose of the calendar, we're going on Thursday. That's why I made it for part one of the end there. Thursday, or 100 to 120 on May 4th.
Maybe the all-star country Christian day. So that's awesome. That's perfect. That's mine.
So some of the things I've seen people write down is to pay off student loans, to save for retirement, save to pay for a house, pay off credit cards, buy a car, travel, house renovations, save for college, get married, pay for a wedding. Travel's a big one. So as you're writing these down, think about short term and think about long term. You know, do you have some short-term stuff? Do you have any big ticket items? Or are you looking more long-term? Do you have, you know, a 10 to 20 year time frame? You know? So I'll let you guys go for another minute or two, and then we'll go on to the next thing. But I recommend is being as detailed as you can. Because part of this process is taking all these things that are in your head and things that you want to do and kind of prioritizing them. And it typically takes money to do these things. So being as detailed oriented as possible is in your best interest. So I don't want to rush anybody, but how are we doing? Should I move on, or do you need another little bit to jot a few more things down? You ready to go on? Great. So these are the things that are important to you. The next step is to identify the dangers to be addressed or to eliminate that will get in the way of you reaching those goals. So I just have a bunch of bullet points here, but if there's anything that kind of resonates to you, that kind of jumps out on the page, you put a little check by it. Lack of motivation rather than having fun, procrastination, distraction, not enough time, not sure how to reach those goals, don't have the skills, don't have the money, you can't afford to do it, feel like you're strapped with debt, job insecurity, poor health, disability, you're taking care of parents, economic challenges, all sorts of things. What are all the things that can get in the way of you reaching your goals? Because you need to identify those things and be able to address them. How can you jump over that hurdle? And if there's anything that's not written down there, I have some space to jot some things down. So obviously the first step is to identify what's important to you. The next thing is to identify the things that need to be addressed for you to achieve those goals. And the next thing, and again, not trying to rush anybody, you can always go back to this, is that what are some of the opportunities that are available to you that will help address these dangers and get where you want to be. And I think the big challenge that we all have, come on in.
Hi, Stephanie.
It's okay.
I was bothering you.
So where we are right now is underneath my bio is the RFactor Questionnaire. And basically in that top section, it's the second sheet underneath that bio. There you go.
Great.
So what you want to do is you want to write all the things that are important to you that need to happen in the next 3 to 5 years for you to feel like you're making progress in life.
Okay.
So that's it. So go ahead and jot down. You'll catch up. Okay.
Thank you.
So obviously the big challenge that we all have is time. And one of the best things that you can do to deal with yourself is just to literally block out time in your calendar. Personally, I like doing it on Saturday mornings after a cup of coffee. So for me, between 9:30 and 11 in the morning on a Saturday, if I need to get something done, my phones aren't ringing, I'm awake, I've had my coffee, and I can kind of focus on stuff that's important to me. But again, you guys do it whenever you want to, but one of the biggest opportunities that you have is actually just making it a priority and blocking out time just to deal with your own finances. There's a thing called a model day calendar, which is basically just an Excel spreadsheet that breaks down every hour of the day. And so I don't know about your jobs, but I'm constantly multitasking. So sometimes, okay, I'm going to block out an hour or two for this particular project or work on this, and I'm just going to focus on that. And if you can kind of block out time in your week to do that, that's a good way to kind of like just focus on one thing, because I don't know about you, but I get distracted very easily. So the model day calendar, all it is an Excel spreadsheet. I can email you guys, but you could do it in any calendar. Also you'll identify the dangers and prioritize which ones to address first. Life can be overwhelming and there's a lot of stuff. So I think just kind of writing things down and to know what you're going to address and then kind of prioritize that can be very, very helpful. So you can mentally just check stuff off your list. There's a thing called a blueprinting exercise that if you kind of like this exercise, if you go to my website and go to information and resources, it's actually right here. So this is a soul-searching, hardcore blueprinting exercise. And you can download it. It's right on my website. And it goes pretty deep in this stuff. What do you value most? Family, health, spiritual fulfillment. And you can value how much, of your time do you dedicate to it. So anyway, this is a neat exercise that's available to you if you want to do it. But again, if you want to get into some serious stuff, if you're doing a career change or a crossroads in your life, this can be very, very helpful to kind of sort that out. That's an opportunity that you have. And also, again, there's resources. There's counselors, teachers, coaches, parents, advisors like myself. There's a ton of resources out there to kind of help you do this. And so one thing is that I'm available to help you if you choose to take my help. So again, so there's a lot of opportunities that are out there. Again, if there's other opportunities that I haven't listed here, you can kind of jot them down. And the other thing too is that people tend to do what they enjoy doing. They tend not to do what they don't like doing. And so you have your strengths. What are the things that you like to do? So jot this down. What are some of the things that you like to do? These are your strengths. Some people are more big picture. Some people, like myself, are very detailed oriented. So you can apply it to just around your house. Do you like to do yard work, or would you rather hire somebody to cut your grass? Do you like to clean your house, or would you rather hire a housekeeper? I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but again, identifying the things that you like to do is helpful. And then the next question is, what do you hate to do? Identify what you don't like to do. Okay, and then figure out, okay, how can you delegate that to others? How can you minimize the things that you hate doing, such as taxes or filing, or things along those lines. So if you can identify what you hate to do, at least okay, at least I hate to do this. Let's figure out how to do it as quickly and as efficiently as I can. Doing taxes is a great example of that. No one likes to do their taxes, but it has to be done. So again, what can you delegate to others is another thing to kind of jot down. It kind of gets into the top is like, what is your time worth? You probably have a mental idea of what your time is worth. Is it better should you be doing $10 an hour work or $150 an hour work? Is it worth spending $125, $150 to have somebody clean up your house? It is for me. So figure out what you can delegate to others will kind of make your life a little better, if you can possibly do it. Would you guys agree? So that is the RFactor Questionnaire. Would anybody like to kind of share some of the goals that they would like to do in the next 3 to 5 years? And you don't have to, but I always try to keep this somewhat interactive. I'd be willing to bet that a bunch of stuff that you just wrote down is on other people's pages as well.
Down payment house, funds for a new car to replace a Jeep, getting married.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have the common ground? Is saving money on your list? Is paying off debt on your list? Is possibly getting married or getting engaged on your list? The down payment of the house is a biggie. One of the things that again, anyway, I tend to get off track because my mind goes there. And so anyway, anybody like to share anything else that's on their to-do list?
Having like an emergency fund for like health stuff.
Yep.
Things just to kind of make you feel better and ease your mind.
Yep. So having a cash cushion is important, and we talk about that. The cash cushion, rule of thumb, if you're single or a single, wage earner in the family, having roughly 6 months of living expenses is the rule of thumb. It's not in stone. With 2 incomes, it's roughly 3 months of living expenses and savings. Anything can happen. Any one of us could come down with a health ailment that is totally unexpected. So savings is a big thing. So that's very, very common. It's good that you wrote that down. Anybody else before I move on? Graduate degree. So now you're thinking, okay, how much do I pay out of pocket? How much student loan do I get? And that's a biggie. I actually saw an article. I'm on all these email lists, and there's a seminar for financial advisors that I saw today about how to calculate whether a graduate degree is worth it. I'm not saying it is or not, but you have to think about the finances. I mean, they're really it's a monetary investment as well as a time investment. So, but anyway, that I see that quite often. Any more before I move on? You good? Okay. So, if you pull out your handouts, I'm going to kind of hit some stuff pretty quickly. We're going to get into the meat of things. I'm just going to do this. So Michael, I am not ignoring you. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. Let's see if I can get, how do I get this thing? Oh, okay, you can see it. Okay. So we just talked about, typically this presentation is done in 2 parts. We're going to do both parts in one section tonight. So we just talked about the dangerous opportunities and strength. And what I want to do is just talk real briefly about financial advisors. Why you want one, why you don't, how to do your due diligence if you're looking for one. And we're going to talk about the financial planning process. In the second half, we're also going to be talking about how to fill out the spreadsheets. And we're going to identify the weak areas in your finances. We're going to talk about techniques to build wealth and reduce debt, and also create your personalized financial roadmap. And all along the way, I'm going to be showing you great resources on how to find this stuff. So anyway, I'm just going to skip through this stuff because we just did it. Okay. We just went over that. Okay. So again, you have to make the decision, are you going to do this on your own or are you going to hire somebody? So if you were going to hire me or anybody else who's competent, who has experience, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about why you would need an advisor. Okay. One is that the world that we live in is very, very complex. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'll be the first to tell you I don't know everything because everything is constantly changing. We have a new administration. That means that new laws and regulations are going to happen. So everything is constantly changing. There's geopolitics. There's products are changing. Regulations are changing. Everything is changing, and it's very complex. One of the things I do Social Security and retirement seminars. I didn't realize how complex Social Security is until I started studying and got my certification about it. Social Security is very, very complex. You got the health care, you got credit cards, student loans, mortgages. Again, the question is that do you put money in your savings or do you pay down your debt? That stuff is not a black and white answer. Investments, we talked a little bit about that while we're just kind of waiting for this thing to start tonight. Stocks, bonds, cash, annuities, alternative investments, annuities in real estate. Again, all these investments in themselves can be complex, but the trick is to really try to get the right combination of investments to reach your goals. And so putting together a portfolio can be complex. Should you be more conservative, more aggressive? How do you deal with risk management? What is your risk tolerance? What are you going to do when the market drops 50% like it did in 2008? So that stuff is complex. The insurance. Nobody likes to pay for insurance, but everybody likes to be covered and everybody likes to have a benefit when you need it. So one of the things that we look at is that as you build your net worth, your assets, you need to protect yourself. One of the most important assets that we have is the ability to make money. So what happens if you walk out on the street today and you get hit by a car and now you're disabled? How does that affect your income? How does that affect your family? Again, I'm not trying to paint a dire picture, but these are the risks that we all take just living in society. So having the right life, health, disability insurance, is important. So we look at that kind of stuff. Does anybody here own a business or plan to own a business? Okay, so I'll skip that. Well, I don't know, we have some Romans over there. But, I work also with business owners. So how do you put together a retirement plan for your employees and deal with group insurance and benefits and HR stuff? So these are all areas that advisors can help people. And again, this is just kind of continuing on. The other thing is that, as I mentioned before, we are in a society of too much information. I can go on Google and I can search for anything. The question is that how do you use it and how do you filter out the noise? And so the process I'm taking you through tonight, kind of doing the financial roadmap, is what a competent advisor should take you through. So again, you'll find that actually, if you actually read your RFactor, that there's many goals and some of them are conflicting. And so again, like paying off student loans or putting for retirement, all these different things, they're all important, but how are you going to rank them? again, your situation has changed. There's a death in the family. You're disabled. You lost a job. You're married, divorced, and you deal with an inheritance. How do you deal with that? I would certainly hope that you would reach out to an advisor or an estate attorney or a CPA. You actually need a team of people to kind of make sure you get the right advice. The biggest fear I have is what I don't know, not what I do know. And so when these things happen, you need to make sure that you're talking to somebody who specializes in these areas that can make sure that you don't step on the landmines that could hurt you. So putting together your team is important. Again, the other thing to hire an advisor for is that you don't have the time or the inclination or the expertise to manage your investments on your own. That's a big one. There's a lot of really, really smart people with a lot of money, but they don't have time to manage the money on their own as well as a professional could. Again, also just the big picture, just comprehensive, well thought out planning should determine what type of insurance and investments that you own. It's not the opposite. There are people out there that just want to sell insurance or just deal with investments. They're eager to sell you a product. That's not the way it should work. Going through the process that we're going through tonight, where you have a goal and you've thought things throughout, and you know your cash flow, and you know your income and expenses, and you know your debt, and you know your equity, and you know your investments, and from there you kind of think through very carefully about the next steps in your financial life. And then at the end of that process, you say, okay, well, maybe I should put a little more money in savings. Maybe I should put a little more money in the Roth IRA. Maybe I should buy a little bit more insurance to make sure that this is covered and I've dealt with this risk. That's the way that you come to the conclusion of the investments and the insurance, all these different things. It's not like, hey, I need to, put away money in this, so let's do it. Now, you can do that way, but I encourage you to think holistically on how that fits into the big picture of how you want to, move forward in your roadmap. Any questions at this point? I'm hitting this stuff pretty fast because I'm doing 2 workshops in one. So please raise your hand and stop me if you have questions. I like this to be interactive. I hear the chirping of the crickets. Okay. Yes.
No questions.
Okay, that's okay. Michael, do you have any questions on the GoToMeeting? You can talk or chat. Okay. No questions. All right. So I'm going to move on. Where's my mouse? Okay. Here we go. For some reason, my mouse is not.
It's run on the TV.
Okay. Let me just do this. It's so weird when I got all these different things up. All right. Here we go. All right. So if you were to interview an advisor, what questions do you ask? Again, all this stuff is in your handouts. Does anybody know what a fiduciary is?
And so you have to have the best interest of the client at heart.
Exactly. So there is a big push right now by the Department of Labor for the fiduciary rule. Okay. What the Obama administration was trying to do was to protect people that have money in 401k accounts that are about to retire, and they want to make sure that there's billions of dollars in 401k money that will be rolled over upon retirement, and they want to make sure that when people meet with an advisor, they have their interest in mind and not just trying to sell a product with a large commission. So one of the things that you should ask is that, are you a fiduciary? And so our firm, we are a hybrid registered investment advisor, and we've been a fiduciary for over 20 years. So if you hire me to manage your money, I take a fiduciary responsibility of doing that, and my personal investments are identical to my client's investments. Okay, so there's no conflict of interest. That is a fiduciary versus the traditional stockbroker that will sell you an A or C share mutual fund, or stockbroker that is actually making money off the transactions of buying and selling stocks. The industry's kind of gone away from that and take on more of a fiduciary responsibility. So again, so the question is, are you a fiduciary? Do you have my interest in mind when you're making recommendations? Very important. How do you charge for your service and how much? You know, do you charge by the hour? Are you a fee only? Do you get paid by fees and commissions? How do you get compensated? What licenses and credentials and other certifications do you have? That's also important. What services do you provide? What do you specialize in? The financial field is much like being a doctor or a lawyer. It's very, very broad, and so it's very difficult to specialize in everything. So I had a call from a client that says, you know, can you help me off with Medicare Advantage and Medicare supplement plans? I said, that's not something I specialize in, so I refer to somebody who does that. So knowing what you specialize in is very important. Can you see a sample plan? So if you're actually going to hire someone to do a plan, ask for a sample of it. How involved is it? How, you know, what areas does it cover? Does it go into estate plan and taxes, all these sorts of things, or is it just one little area? What is your investment approach? This is a big issue. How many people here are more buy and hold, invest for the long-term kind of investors? Okay. How many people are more tactical, more relative strength? You want to buy the more momentum oriented. Okay. How many people not sure what kind of investor you are? Okay. That's okay. That's okay. But the more experience you have with investing, and the longer you've been in the market and you've gone through different cycles, you'll by default have your opinions. And there is no right way. There's not only one way to actually manage money. And so anyway, asking about the investment approach is very important. One of the big things about that is, and you may want to jot this down, the question that you should ask anyone who's going to manage your money is, what are you going to do to protect my money when the next bear market recession hits? I'll repeat that. How are you going to protect my money during the next bear market recession? I'll say it 3 times. What are you going to do to protect my money during the next bear market recession? And this is where your risk tolerance comes into play. From October 7th, 2007 to March the 9th, 2009, the S&P 500 was down negative 57%. It took until March of 2013 to get to the break-even point. Is that acceptable to you? I can't answer that question. You have to answer that question. So one of the things I teach in my classes is that even in your 401ks, at some point we've had 16 bear market recessions since the Great Depression. On average, that happens every 5.5 years. Again, the last bear market recession ended on March the 9th, 2009, and here we are in March of 2017. So on the bell curve, we are over the average of when bear market recessions happen. The only one that's happened, the only bull market that's lasted longer than where we are right now is the one in the late 90s before the 2000 crash. Okay, we're not there yet. So bull markets can last for a long time, but we know that we will have another bear market recession, which is defined as a 20% or more drop in S&P 500 for 3 consecutive quarters. So what I'm trying to instill in you is that you do not have to accept a 50% drop in your 401k and your other investments when this happens. You do have options. So when that happens, please, you have my contact information. If you want to sign up with my email list, I'll let you know what's going on. Okay? Actually, you can go to my website and see my little market report, and I'll tell you what's going on. So you do not have to suffer a 50% loss in the next recession. So that's one of the questions you have to ask your advisor. How are you going to protect my money? Okay? Again, how much contact do you have with your clients? Are you just going to give me as a client and I never hear from you again? Or are you going to, at least give me a call every 90 days, or you have letters, monthly letters, or newsletters, or emails that you send out when major market things happen? How often do you keep in touch with your clients? And another thing is, have you been publicly disciplined for any unlawful or unethical actions in your career? Okay, and I'm going to show you actually how to figure that out. So this is a very important thing I'm going to show you. So what I'd like you to do is go, if you have your computer up, If you don't, that's fine. Go to finra.org. You just get up a browser for, if you don't have a computer, don't worry about it. Because I'm going to show you this right here on the screen. So if you don't have your computer, don't worry about it. But on finra.org, FINRA is the organization that supervises registered representatives like myself. Okay? This is one of the sources of information that you guys need to be aware of. So here's a section for industry professionals, and here's a whole section for investors. Now up in the upper right here, you're going to see broker check. And so if you're interviewing Joe Blow advisor, you can type them in. So I'm going to type myself into broker check, and there I am, James Cameron Musgrave. And if you're registered, that's the first test right there. Are you actually a registered representative, or are you someone who's putting themselves out as a retirement specialist who's just licensed to sell annuities, life insurance? This is a big problem in the state of Florida with a lot of retirees. So what I'm showing you with here with broker check is that you can see here I am and all the years of experience, the different exams that I've passed, all the different states I've been licensed in. Here's my broker dealer, and here are the different firms I've been with since 1998. Okay? So my point is that, and also you can kind of scroll down, are there any complaints or stuff like that. So that's all on here. So you can see the state licenses and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, the broker check is a resource for you to do your due diligence on your advisor, whoever you are going to interview. Is this helpful to you guys? Do you want to be able to catch a crook before he steals your money? Okay, I want to see heads go up and down. Yes. Okay, good. All right. So again, I'm trying to show you how to protect yourself. All right. So that's broker check. I'm going to come back to FINRA in just a little bit. Okay.
On the second thing on that slide about like the fees that they charge.
Yes.
Like once you find out, how do you tell if it's like reasonable or not?
Great question. So the question is, how do you know if a fee is reasonable? So, for example, I charged I'll just use myself for example. So if you were to hire me to do a comprehensive financial plan, I charge $150 an hour. That plan, you can take, that plan stands on its own, and you could take it to any competent advisor and implement it. It should not have product recommendations. It should have general concepts, but it should stand on its own. Okay. Now, in terms of managing money, a typical fee for managing money is between 1 and 1.5%. I have a decreasing fee structure for my clients. For my 100% aggressive growth, 100% stocks, it's at 1.25, and it goes down to 1% for a bond portfolio. So that's for accounts under $1 million. Now, for my clients with accounts over $1 million, it drops. So actually, the more money that I manage, the fees should come down. So I have a sliding scale on my advisory fees. So obviously, a $5 million client is not going to be charged as much as a $50,000 client. Okay. So, but the quick answer to your question is somewhere between 1 and 1.5%. Now, there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of guys that you can talk to, and so I would probably say the average fee is somewhere maybe closer to 1, 1.25 versus 1.5. But that kind of gets you in the ballpark. And then the other, since you're asking that question, which is an excellent question, the question is that, okay, what are you doing for me for your fee? What services do you provide? Okay, because you guys can do this. Again, I'm just being completely honest and frank with you. I want you to make good decisions. You could go to Vanguard, right? You can go to the Vanguard website, and you can buy. Here's good. You go to Vanguard to personal investors. What's all this stuff going on? Social Security. Sorry about this, guys. Really? Okay. So my point is that you can actually go to any one of these websites and actually get, I'm sorry, my stupid security stuff is blocking this website. I'm sorry about that, guys. But anyway, point is that you can go to Schwab, Vanguard, TIWA, Fidelity, and get into a very, very low cost mutual fund or ETF and not pay advisor fees. Okay, so the question is that what kind of value is the advisor providing? Okay, in my business, instead of charging in $6 increments like an attorney does, basically once I have a client, I actually do financial comprehensive planning services, and I don't charge for that. I don't charge my $150 an hour for my investment clients. So I actually, in terms of my fee, I actually include financial planning involved with that, which is tremendously valuable. So that's something that you would ask an advisor. Do you charge me extra hourly fee to do financial planning? Yes or no? I personally don't. Some do. So that's one of the things that you want to ask. So again, the question is that typically for people that are just kind of starting out that don't have a lot of money to invest, I'm not sure how valuable a financial advisor is. Is it really worth the fee? Or can you go to Schwab Intelligent Portfolios or Vanguard and just get a fund that has a 10 basis points expense ratio? So anyway, that's a great question. Did I answer your question pretty well?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Yes, go ahead.
Follow-up question. So in terms of actually finding an advisor, I guess, so Schwab and Vanguard and Fidelity, I know some banks also do advising. What are your recommendations for finding one just for basic investment?
That's a good question. So the question is that how do you find a good advisor? Where to go? I always first of all, I would talk to parents, friends, and coworkers. Hey, or I would talk to your CPA. I would talk to other professionals that people work with. Say, hey, listen, I'm interested in interviewing 2 or 3 or 4 advisors. Do you recommend? Everybody has a guy, okay? Typically, if you're working, again, I'm not sure where you guys work, but typically a business owner will have a whole team of advisors. You can talk to someone in upper level management who, quite frankly, has some money or has some responsibilities to run a business. Hey, do you have an advisor who you'd recommend?
You typically, I didn't look into ours, but outsourced HR benefits departments might have them as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think our small business owner, instead of save money, instead of his wife doing the payroll and everything, they just did it with Insperity.
Yeah.
It's they might have stuff as well at a reduced rate since you're already employed.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Insperity. That Insperity person may be a good person to, but yeah, you could also talk to your HR person. Because typically, if you're participating in a 401k, then it's, well, again, 401k is private and 403b is public. So if you work for a hospital or a college or like the state of Maryland, that's typically a 403b. If you work for a company, that's typically a 401k. If you're in a 401k, there's always going to be, well, I can't say always, there's most of the time an advisor who's managing that 401k. So ask your HR person, hey, who's the 401k advisor on this plan? Do they provide financial plan services? I do a bunch of 401k, I have a bunch of 401k plans, and that's one of the things I do as the advisor on the 401k plan is that I do these kind of talks for the participants. So the other thing about banks, there are a handful of banks that will actually use a good broker-dealer that can offer many different products. The thing that you have to be cautious about banks is that banks have typically had a very limited number of investments that they offer. They may, obviously they do their CDs because every bank does that, but they may have a small offering of mutual funds. Some of your bigger banks may actually provide planning services. So just be aware of the banks that I can't, I'm not going to tell you to stay away from banks, but that would not be my first choice.
Well, banks would be more for just the liquid term, the money market funds, the shorter term stuff.
A lot. What I've seen with banks, forgive me if I kind of go off the reservation a little bit. Back in the original Depression, okay, some of the legislation that came from that was the Glass-Steagall Act, which they wanted to keep the banks out of being an investment bank business, so they separated it. So Glass-Steagall kind of actually that went away, and now banks have kind of gotten back into the investment banking business and gotten into the financial planning business, selling products. And so as that has happened, again, banks, you have the CDs, they would typically offer, let's say, a handful of mutual funds, some insurance, some basic stuff, but they weren't to the level of many comprehensive, planning firms that offered a much broader, brush of those sorts of things. I haven't seen many banks that are fee-based versus commission-based. And that's another thing just to kind of jot down is that when you ask the bank or whoever is there, say, are you fee-based or are you commission-based? Do you have to sell me a mutual fund or an insurance product to make money off of me? And many banks, that's how they get compensated. So, just something to kind of keep in mind. All right, so I'll kind of move on a little bit. Okay, so let me just kind of talk about this, and I'm going to. So this is okay. So again, I talked a little bit about how to hire an advisor, why you would need one, and so forth. What I'm going to share with you now, again, is right in your handouts, the 6 steps for financial planning, and we're actually going to be covering step 1 and 2 tonight. Okay, so all right. So the first step is to establish and define the client-advisor relationship, and again, that's when your advisor will explain his or her financial planning services and define each of the responsibilities, along with compensation, all that kind of stuff. So once you kind of establish that relationship with the advisor, the next step is to kind of gather your financial data and define your goals. And we're going to be doing that in just about 60 seconds. The next thing is that once you've kind of taken a snapshot of your finances, you need to analyze and evaluate your financial status. And so that's where the advisor kind of takes this, or if you're going to do it, this is time for you to do it, kind of analyzing all the different pieces of the puzzle. And so then again, that's when we look at things comprehensively. And the next thing is actually to review the recommendations. So again, you don't have to implement all the advisor's recommendations. A lot of it is that, okay, you tell me this, here are 2 or 3 different options, and here are the pros and cons of the different options. So I firmly believe that if you are aware of the pros and cons of all the different solutions on the table, that you'll make the best decision because you're making an educated decision. Okay, so that's where you kind of review the advisor's recommendations, and then you actually said, okay, well, this sounds good, this sounds good. Let's go ahead and implement the recommendations that were made by the advisor. And typically, the bunch of implementation is done, either some investments or insurance, or maybe with an estate planner, or getting together with an attorney, or a CPA. And then basically, at least once a year, you need to kind of monitor your plan. And so that's kind of how the process is. So once you do go through the financial planning process and actually implement your roadmap, then you have to kind of monitor things, every 1 to 2 years. And that's the process. So again, either you're going to do it or you're going to work with somebody else to do that for you. Any questions at this point before I kind of move on to the next section? You guys are very smart, brilliant people. Okay. So I'm going to officially, okay, I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, so we talked about the big picture stuff. Now let's actually focus on you. Okay, now, if you got a notebook in front of you, this is the time to actually get up your financial spreadsheets. Okay, so if you actually brought investment statements or any other stuff that you kind of plug in here, again, we're trying to be not to share personal information, but the point is if you actually brought like financial statements and stuff to kind of plug in, this would be the time to pull out that stuff. If you don't, that's fine. But so what I'm going to do between now and the end of the workshop is I want to show you how to fill out these spreadsheets, and then as I go through the different tabs, I will be talking about different tips you can do. So this is the part where I really want you guys to be interactive and ask questions, because I want to talk about something that's going to be relevant to your situation, and this is the time to actually ask questions. Okay? So the first thing, before I start, on my website right here, we go to the home page. Come on. There's a video right here on how to fill out your financial spreadsheets. So if you need to repeat, you can.
Hello, this is Jim Musgrave.
There you go. You don't want to hear that boring guy. So anyway, but I recorded a video of how I'm doing this, so if you miss it, you got that. And did I send you the actual Word document how to fill these out?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a Word document too. Great. All right. So here we go. The first thing I want to point out are all these tabs at the bottom. And there are more tabs on the bottom of the more tabs in the spreadsheets than you can see on your screen. So in this lower hand corner, you have a little arrow, so you can click this and see more tabs. See how I'm doing that? If you want to get back to the front, I just hit that left-hand arrow. So I'm just kind of giving you some basic navigation tips on how to do this stuff. Okay, so I created these spreadsheets back in 2006 when I wanted to sit down with somebody and gather that information very, very quickly and be able to update it and be able to give this to a client. So the first page is just general information, your basic information with you, if you're a spouse, if you have kids. This is a young crowd, so retirement is probably not the biggest priority at the moment. But, if it is, then you can kind of jot down what age do you want to retire. What is your estimated Social Security? By the way, how many people here have actually logged on to Social Security and can actually get their statement? I see one hand. Okay, this is a young crowd. I'm going to forgive you guys. By the way, they don't mail this stuff out anymore. So one of the things that you want to do is go onto ssa.gov and make sure you have a username and password for your Social Security. Okay. So you're going to get your Social Security stuff. And by the way, if you go to information resources on my website, I have that. Where is it? Did I not have it? Maybe I don't have it. I should put it on there. Okay. Oh, here it is, Social Security Administration. So here it is. It's on my website. And then just go, sign in or sign up. So you definitely need to do that. I know Social Security is a long, long way away, but this is one of those little pieces of the puzzle that I'm going to encourage you to get. Okay? All right. So hopefully you guys are taking advantage of the group disability through your employers. Hopefully they offer it. Hopefully you guys are doing it. So do you have short or long-term disability, yes or no? I'd be willing to bet that no one here has long-term care insurance, so that's fine. It's a young crowd. When's the last time your will powers of attorney and living wills were updated? Probably never. So that's something to kind of put on your to-do list. Why don't you just get this and highlight it in yellow or something, So anyway, again, these are your spreadsheets. You can type on them. You can do whatever you want to with them to kind of get your attention. Okay. How much you contributing to your employer's plan, and then how many people here work for the federal government or the state of Maryland or DC or Virginia? Okay, so do you have a pension, or are you participating in the pension system?
I'm a contractor.
Okay.
That's different.
Okay, so if you are an actual employee of the state of Maryland, DC, or Virginia, or a federal employee, and you're playing the FERS plan, then you'd be eligible for a pension. So that probably doesn't, if that's not relevant to you, then we're going to skip that. Okay? All right, so I'm going to skip to the income and expenses right here. This is the one page that will take the most time, but is also the most important. Okay? So when you go home at some point and you do this because you're good, conscientious financial planners, you want to go to your credit cards, you want to go to your checkbook, and if you're using Quicken or Mint or some sort of program like that, which I hopefully you are, you want to go to that because you want to itemize where you're spending money. So how you do this is that you basically, with these spreadsheets, you actually type in the monthly amount, hit enter or tab, then the annual will automatically calculate. So again, I just created a fictional person right here. And so this person grosses, again, this is gross income. So what you can do is look on your pay stub, or if you know what your gross income is, what you do is that you just take the gross, divide it by 12, and type this in there. You're either probably going to get paid either every 2 weeks or twice a month. There's either 24 pays or 26 pays. So my point is that the easiest thing to do is that with these spreadsheets, we're just looking at the monthly amount. So what I do is I take the annual amount divided by 12 and I type it in here. So let's say my monthly amount is 5,000. If I do that and I hit tab, you see how that changes. Okay. Since I'd really be in the red at 5,000 a month, I'm going to type in 6 again, hit tab, and you'll see that the annual automatically calculates. So you can type in your name, you can type in your spouse's name or significant other, somebody who's living with you, partner, and type in their information. Pension Social Security is not relevant to you guys. Investment income is probably not relevant to you unless you have some sort of investment deal. If you guys, in this case, I have this person having some rental properties. So by the way, you do not type in real estate income here. I'm just going to kind of, let me ask you this, does anybody have any rental properties? No, all right. If you did, you would go to the real estate tab and you type in your rental and the monthly money right here. So I have this case where this guy has a mortgage and he's renting out a room and has a roommate or an adult child that says, I'm going to make you pay to stay in this house, and a rental income, that's where he came up with 3,300, and that 3,300 actually shows up right here in this thing. So since that's not relative, I'm going to move on. The other thing that you want to do is this. Grab a pay stub, and on your pay stub, you will have deductions for your federal taxes, your state taxes, your FICA, and also the Social Security, all that stuff. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to lump all this stuff together. So, and again, all that stuff is on your pay stub. So what you do is that if you are getting paid 26 times per year, you're going to say, you're going to add up federal, state, FICA, all that stuff, and you're going to multiply it by 26 and divide it by 12. Again, we're trying to find the monthly average of what you're paying in your pay stub. Does that make sense? Okay, that's the one thing that's tricky on this particular on these spreadsheets is what do I put in? Because what we're trying to do is trying to lump in together roughly what you're withholding for taxes. That's all we're trying to do for budgeting purposes, and it doesn't need to be exact. We're just trying to ballpark it. Okay. Okay, for savings. Okay. Show of hands, how many people are actually contributing to their 401k plan? Let's see. Most people raising their hands. Good. So you can either do that by dollar amount or by percentage. Okay. So your pay stub should show you dollar amount, how much you're doing.
Would you recommend separating out the employee contribution and the employer?
Yes, I would, because what you care about is your contributions. Okay, that's when it's coming out of your paycheck. The employer stuff doesn't affect your paycheck. It just accumulates in your account. So the answer is, so the question is, do you break out the employer and the employee and employer contribution? The answer is yes. All we care about are your contributions. Okay. Now the other, you had a question about the savings. Okay. So this should go in your budget. How much money per month are you putting in your savings account? In this case, I just put $100. You put whatever you want. So if you put in $50 a month or $200 a month or whatever it is, that's where you put that in. So that's where, again, what this is showing is the cash flow. where's the money going? Okay, so it starts with your gross income, you got taxes taken out, then you've got money going to the 401k, and now you got some money that ends up in your checking account. Okay, so out of that net, out of your checking account, now where's the money go? Okay, now you may have the ability to have money go directly from your checking account to a savings account, or from the payroll from the company to your savings account. You may or may not have that ability, but you can possibly do that. Okay. The point is that we're trying to see what is your cash flow for retirement and savings. That's going to put it right here. Okay, anything in red is going to pull from a different page. Actually, what I should do is I should make this red because that comes from a different page. Okay, so you see life insurance right here. Well, you see there's a life insurance tab. See right here. If you click on that, this person has $60,000 of term life, and it's cost him $30 a year, and he's got a Prudential universal life policy that costs him $1,000 a year, so he's totally spending $1,030. When you actually type in the type of insurance, you can see we have the premiums and we have the different types of insurance: term, whole life, universal life, variable universal life. As you put that stuff in there, you will see in the income expenses that it breaks it down. It breaks down per month. Okay. So does anybody here have individual life insurance that they're paying premiums on? Excellent. Okay. So that's where you would put it in. You put in the gross premiums per year in here. And so that's about it. And just for for time, I'm going to not hit that too hard, but this is where you would put it. Okay. So then the other thing you can do is look at your pay stub and see, are you paying for disability or medical insurance or dental? And chances are you are. That money's coming out of your paycheck to pay for health insurance, at least a portion of it. So that's where you enter that information right here. Okay. This is all discretionary stuff. So I'll just do this so you can see more. Are you putting money into, you give money to charity, to churches? I mean, there's 3 or 4 nonprofits that I give to every year. So that kind of goes into my budget. Personal care, that's for guys, that's pretty much, getting your hair, guys and gals, is getting your hair cut. For gals, getting nails done, going to CVS to pick up personal care products like hair stuff or whatever. I just kind of lump that in there. I kind of separate personal care from going to the grocery store. Like if you got a cold and want to get some cold medicine, I would put it in there versus going to Giant. But you can put whatever you want to. It's just a place that you can itemize, personal care stuff. But again, I would kind of put haircuts in that. The dining out, this is the biggie. This is the killer. We all have a lifestyle and things that we enjoy doing. But the dining out, be honest with yourself on this, because this is where a ton of money is going. I promise you. Look at your credit card statements. I'm not going to guilt you in how much money you're spending dining out, but I'm just telling you this is an area that is shocking. Okay, now gifts, Christmas, birthdays, whatever. Obviously, the holidays come in one big lump sum, and you have some birthdays spread throughout the year. So let's say, hey, I spend $500 during the holidays. Again, divide that by 12 and pop that in there. Okay. All this stuff is pretty self-explanatory as you kind of understand it. I want to come back to the debt in just a second. If you are renting an apartment versus owning a house, you're going to obviously put the rent right here. You may have homeowners insurance or renters. Actually, if you have renters insurance, you could just type over homeowners and write renters right here. Okay. Obviously, you don't have property taxes renting. You probably don't have maintenance of yard when you're renting, but you probably may pay utilities. So this is where you're going to put your utilities, your cable internet, your cell phone, all that kind of stuff is going to go under housing. I have like a FiOS quad place, so I've got like 4 different things in one bill. So I just kind of lump all that stuff together. Is all this stuff pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory? Again, as we're going through this stuff, if you know something like how much you pay in rent, then type it in. This is just stuff that you can enter in while we're going through this stuff.
I have a question.
Yes.
For under savings retirement plan, we can include
what are employers contributing?
You don't want
You
to,
don't want to include it.
because what I care about is your cash flow.
Okay.
So the employer contribution is not coming out of your pocket.
Okay.
So just think about your stuff.
Okay. And that's across the board, so like if your employer's paying into like insurance and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and that's why there's this little feature called Save As. So when your life changes, hit Save As, and the way I normally save this stuff is that I'll do like the month and the year. So if we fill these out today, so when you hit Save As, since we're coming up on April, I would just say 4-2017. And then let's say in 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, or 10 years from now, you can hit Save As and save it as that month and year. So you can kind of keep on it. And that's what I do with my clients. I say, okay, what's changed? You know, what life changes have happened? So let's update this stuff. Okay. Okay. So same thing with transportation, with the fuel, the car. A number of you may not own a car. You may decide to live downtown and Uber and Metro. So obviously you don't have a car expense, but you probably have an expense for Uber and Metro. So you want to put that in there. Okay. Whatever you spend on that stuff, again, you can type over these fields in Excel. Just do it the way you want. And also we have the living expenses right there. So what you can see is that, okay, I want to zero this out because I was just doing an example. This person has a home, and so I was having a home and rent an apartment. So we actually have positive cash flow in this sense. Okay. So the next tab I want to show you is the financial statement at the bottom. As we populate all these fields, your financial statement will automatically populate. And this is your report card as an adult. How are you doing? Okay. Do we have a positive cash flow or a negative cash flow? And by the way, we have all these nifty little debt ratios on the right here that we have just sort of as like rules of thumb. But as you can see, we have income and expenses, and you can see we have the headlines right here on the previous page, the taxes, savings, insurance, and they add up to this. And then if you scroll down a little bit, we have the assets and liabilities. Assets are what you own, and liabilities are what you owe. So as we fill out this stuff, you'll see your net worth down here. And we want to see that get bigger and bigger and bigger every year. Okay. Now, if you have a negative net worth, that's okay. Okay. And I see that frequently. That typically happens when you are renting an apartment and you've got a bunch of student loan debt and you're getting your master's degree. So if that happens, it's not a big deal. Okay. You're young, you have time to grow and get out of that hole. All right. Don't be discouraged. You're making an investment in yourself and your career, and that's good. Okay. So if you have a negative net worth, it's certainly possible if you don't own a house and you're renting an apartment and you've got $100,000 of student loans, which I've seen too often. Okay. Now, I'm also going to show you this matrix. I'm going to kind of come back to this. What the matrix is that as we enter in your investments, we're going to break them down into an asset allocation and a tax allocation. Okay? So we have, from a tax allocation, taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. And then from an asset allocation, we have money in cash, fixed income like bonds, and also equities or stocks. And so I want to come back to this, but what's neat about these spreadsheets is that as we enter in all of our investment accounts and savings, this will automatically populate. And it'll also visually help you to determine, okay, I got X amount of dollars left over at the end of the month. Where do I put it in my taxable accounts, or tax deferred, or tax free? Does that make sense? So again, you're becoming aware of what's going on here. Okay. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time on the liabilities tab. Okay. Now the liabilities tab, this is where you put all your debt. Again, I just put in a bunch of examples. So I have 4 student loans at various amounts. I got the monthly payments, and you also have the interest rates, and also how much time is remaining in that debt. So if you have student loans, look them up, go online, and see if they have a breakdown of what those loans are. If you have any credit card debt that you do not pay off every single month, put that in there. So I had this guy having a Visa card, and he owes $1,800, and he's paying $200 a month, and it's a 22% interest rate on his Visa card, which, crazy as it is, that's about normal. So let me ask you this, guys. If you were in this situation and you were to pay off some of the debt, which out of these student loans and visas would you try to pay off faster?
Visa,
Visa. Okay, that's the right answer. Why?
because that's a higher interest rate.
That's right. So think about this analogy. If the objective is to fill the bathtub, which is to grow our net worth, right? We're trying to, the water coming in from the shower head is the amount of rate of return that we're going to get on our investments. So let's say in our example, we have a gallon of water coming in per hour. That represents 1%. And so if I have a savings account making 1%, I'm filling up the bathtub at 1 gallon per hour. But you know what? I've got this thing called a Visa bill that's draining my bathtub at 22 gallons per hour. See what I'm saying? Is so obviously I can't fill up the tub when I'm strapped with that debt and it's just draining out 22 times faster. Okay? So this is the concept of, do I pay down debt or do I put money in savings? And there's no 100% right answer for everybody. Okay? But this is why we go through this process, because everybody has a different situation. And so, but this is a big thing. So ideally what you want to do is that you go back to your income expenses, is that you want to put a little bit of money in the 401k, a little bit of money in savings, but you also want to pay down these debts. So you want to emphasize. Now I've had a number of scenarios where I said, okay, you know what? You are so underwater with your debt that if you don't get aggressive about this, you will never get out. So in some cases, it's better to actually stop making contributions to the 401k, especially when the stock market sucks. Right now the stock market is okay, but in times where the market's down and you're losing money, it's like, you know what? Maybe I should temporarily stop that for 6 months and really take that money and focus on paying down the principal of this debt. That way you can accelerate it faster. Now let me show you something else that's really cool. There is a website called bankrate.com. You can actually type this into your own little browser and save it. So what I like about Bankrate and FINRA is that they have pretty cool calculators. Okay, so when you go to Bankrate, you scroll down a little bit and it says popular calculators. And I click on see all calculators. And voila, here you go. So here's credit card, investment, retirement, mortgage, tax, insurance, all this kind of stuff. You got, how much house can you afford? How much car can you afford for a car payment? Here's your credit card calculators. Home equity. So you see all this stuff? And this is free. It's right there on bankrate.com. And I go to this stuff all the time. I mean, it's a simple, again, you just got to know where the information is. The other thing too is that if you go back to FINRA, if I go back to, get out here, you see for investors. Again, this is the FINRA.org. You can click on for investors. And you also have tools and calculators. See all this stuff? So again, I'm just kind of showing you different places where you can use these calculators. Pretty cool. So there's retirement, 401k, savings, college savings, accrued interest, all that stuff. Quite frankly, I think bankrate.com has better calculators. That's why I use them. Okay? So, just want to show you that. Now, going back here. Oh, question, yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I was told kind of, right when you have enough money, go ahead and try to like put a down payment on a place so you're not like kind of throwing away like rental money. But I was kind of getting nervous about that because I feel like sometimes buying property can be a trendy kind of thing, like as in certain areas are trendy, so prices can be good for a couple of years and then it can kind of like take a downturn in certain areas.
Right.
And like some of our crews don't really know exactly how long you're going to be in a certain area.
Right.
So what is kind of like your advice?
That's a great question. The key is to have, okay, I'm a big fan of owning a home. What I'm not a big fan of is being house poor. Okay, so there's rules of thumb. We got a financial statement. So housing cost. So your housing cost should not be more than 28% of your gross monthly income. Okay? So real simple, if your housing cost with mortgage and whatever utilities, all that kind of stuff is over a third of your income, maybe it's not time to, have a house. So, which leads to the next question, okay, well, how much down payment do I need to put down? Okay, now you can, the lenders of mortgages, they were really loose before this last recession, and then they got tighter, and now things are starting to loosen up a little bit. But the things that are important are A, having good credit, and B, I highly recommend putting down at least 10% on a house. Now, you can technically get a mortgage with less, like 5% down. Let's just do the simple math. It's hard to find anything for $100,000 around here. But if you bought $100,000, 10% is $10,000. Just double that for 200 and triple that. So if you had a $300,000 condo, there's $30,000 at 10% you ought to put down. Now, so just because you put that money down, then again, what's your mortgage payment? So what you don't want to have is have this beautiful house and all those things that you wrote down on your to-do list, like things that you want to accomplish, you're strapped because you can't freaking afford it. I think going on a vacation and visiting family is important. So what if you can't afford a $400 plane ticket because your mortgage is too high, or whatever. Now there's ways that you can get around that by certainly you can get a roommate, and a bunch of people do that. So there's ways of making it work. It all depends on your situation. I personally didn't buy a house until I was in my 30s. I just wasn't at a point in my life, and it took me a while to save enough money to get to it. But anyway, so it's hard to have a rule of thumb. But again, if the ratio is a third or below, that'd be a ballpark. Again, these are just rules of thumb. Again, don't be house poor. And also you got to make sure that you have enough stability in your income that, let's say you get laid off or you're a contractor or something like that. I got a bunch of people who are in the computer business or computer contractors, and they got a job for 2 years. So they want to make sure that they have $50,000 or $100,000 in savings that they can go into in case the job runs out and they can't find another gig. So that's why everybody's different. You have to really kind of look and see what's right for you. That's probably the best answer I can give at the moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So there are the liabilities. Let's talk about the real estate for a second. So does anybody here own a house and have a mortgage? No? Okay. So when if you get to that point, again, you're just going to type in the value of the house, the amount that you own the mortgage, the monthly payment, all that kind of stuff. And all this stuff on the real estate page and the liability page is going to show up right here in your income expenses. Anything red will pull from a different page right here. Okay? Okay. So we're actually, believe it or not, we don't have a whole lot more to cover, which is great because I think I'm going to end on time. I talked real briefly about the life insurance tab. Again, depending on what type of policy, that's where you kind of put this information, and just kind of type in the annual amount right here, and then it'll automatically show up in your income expenses. Anybody here own annuities? Kind of doubt it, kind of young. Okay. You can see over that. So let's kind of go back to the matrix, because this is a really important concept. I want to make sure you guys get this. Okay. I briefly mentioned there are 3 different tax baskets: taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. You need money in all 3 tax baskets. Why? So for your short-term stuff, such as the house, a car, the big ticket things, you obviously want to have access to that money. It's liquid. You can put your hands on it. You can spend it without being hit with a 10% penalty from the IRS, right? So it's your liquid money. The advantage of the taxable accounts is that it's liquid. So your savings accounts, anything that's not in your 401k, anything that's not in an IRA is going to be in what we call a non-qualified account or taxable account, okay? So if you look down here, see I have this as savings. So what you can do is that you can literally double click, yes, for you, those of you with the spreadsheets in front of you, literally double click on that non-qual one, yeah, right there, and then you can title it savings. Hopefully you guys will have a savings account. Then hit enter, and that, so you can retitle that. Let's say that's Bank of America, for example. So you can title these tabs any way you want to. Okay, so what you want to do is that you want to put the name of the bank up here and cell A1. If you want to put your account number, that's fine. So right here, I just have savings. And in this case, I put down $7,500. You put whatever's in your savings account. Okay. So by putting that in there, okay, so now I've got clients with literally a dozen different savings accounts. I don't know why, but I've seen it. So if you have lots of different accounts and you just want to lump them all, you can say, same as at Bank of America. You could put M&T. You could put, the credit union or whatever. You can just go down the line. I mean, cash is cash, and you can just kind of fill out that stuff and fill it in. So you can see, so if I go back to my matrix, you'll see $7,500 shows up right there. So let's say I add another $1,000 at M&T Bank, and I hit enter. I go back to the matrix, you can see that goes up to 85. See? So as you enter in this information, these columns will calculate and will total right here. So let's say you're at a bank and you had a bunch of mutual funds that had $20,000. Click that and you see that the total now went up to $28,500. So again, all this stuff automatically calculates all this stuff for you. Does that any questions on this stuff right here? Okay.
What would be the qualified, what might go in the qualified category of the matrix?
That's the next thing I was going to cover. You're right on the wavelength. Okay. So just a quick review, because this is really important. Taxable is money that you accessible that's not in a retirement account. Qualified is what we call the tax deferred. It qualifies for a current year tax deduction. So you're going to see those tabs down here. You have non-qual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have qualified 1. Now, this was a 401k plan. So most people raise their hands in here. So what I want you to do is I want you to double click on this tab and write down current 401k or the company's 401k that you're in. So go ahead and do that.
In which tab?
So qualified 1. Okay. So if you worked at the advisory board, I click advisory 401k, and then again you want to title it right here in cell A1. Say advisory board 401k. Okay. And this is where you actually enter all the accounts that you're invested in. If you're in the Vanguard Target Date 2045 fund, you'd put that there. If you have 20 different funds you're in your 401k, you'd put them in. And by the way, you can see there's only, a handful of spaces. Well, all you got to do is just, if you want to enter more spaces, just highlight these cells. You can right-click, and you could insert, and boom, I just insert a bunch of rows. Anybody need me to show you how to do that again? That's just a basic Excel thing. So if you need more rows to enter stuff in here, just enter rows. Again, all you just highlight, then right-click, and then just hit insert. Okay? So you can do that. Then I would also write down here your contributions, let's say are 5% of your salary or $250 a month, and the employer is matching, let's say, 3%. So, you can also just kind of make some notes on what you're doing right there. That make sense? Okay. So what the qualified means is that it qualifies for a current year tax deduction. Okay. So this is important because you guys probably are finishing up doing your taxes or even possibly even already done it. Okay. So what's the advantage of the tax deferred accounts? Anybody?
It can bump you to a lower tax bracket now.
Okay. So the advantage of the tax deferred is that for every dollar that you contribute to the tax deferred plan, you get $1 off your taxable income. Real simple math. If I make $100,000 and I put in $10,000 into my traditional 401k, my taxable income drops from 100 down to 90,000. Simple concept. So the advantage of the tax deferred accounts are on the front end. Okay, I get $1 for dollar tax deduction on the contributions. Now, do I get taxed on, do I pay capital gains tax on my 401k money? No, you're right. Your initial thing was right. Okay, so all the money that grows, assuming that you're going to make money, is tax deferred. You do not pay any taxes on your 401k or traditional IRAs until you take that money out, right? So what happens when you take the money out of the IRA or 401k? How's it taxed? Here's a hint. Did you ever pay taxes on that money before you put it in? The answer is no. So you never pay taxes. So when you pull money out of your traditional 401k or IRA, it's taxed at your ordinary income tax bracket. Okay? So the advantage is on the front end with tax deferred. Current year tax deduction, I pay less taxes today, and also tax deferred. By the way, what's the age I can take out this money without being hit with a 10% penalty? Anybody?
65?
Come on.
59.5.
59.5. So you can take it, once you hit 59.5, you can take out money from your IRAs without being hit with a 10% penalty. Here's another trick question for you. In an individual IRA, how much can you put into an IRA today? $5,500. Once you reach the age of 50, how much can you put in? It's another $1,000 or $6,500. By the way, I have a cheat sheet here, so if anybody wants to see it, I can also email it to you. So how much money can you put into your 401k right now? So today in 2017, if you want to max out your 401k, how much could you put in? The answer is $18,000. You guys have a ways to go, but once you hit the age of 50, you can put in a total of $24,000. Okay? So these are just IRS limits that you can put in. Okay? So now once you reach 70.5, the IRS says, hey, you know what? We allowed you to grow all this money for all these years. I want my money. So the IRS has this thing called required minimum distribution that requires you to take out money out of your IRAs, whether you like it or not. Oh, and by the way, if you don't take money out and don't do your required minimum distribution, the IRS will hit you with a 50% penalty plus the tax that you should have taken out to begin with. And ignorance is not a defense. So anyway, next thing is the Roth IRA. Same example, I make $100,000, I put in $10,000 in my Roth 401k. Okay, do I get a current year tax deduction? The answer is no. Okay, does the money go tax deferred? Yes. But here's the question for you guys. When I pull the money out of my Roth 401k or Roth IRA, is it taxed? Yes or no? You guys are awesome. Okay. How many people actually like paying taxes? Okay, would you rather pay no tax or your ordinary income tax? Okay. So the point is that you need money in all three tax brackets. Does that make sense? So and again, everybody's in a different situation, but what I personally do is that I will split, well, actually I fill up my Roth 401k first, and then I will contribute to my taxable, and so I will split my taxable and my Roth in my contributions to my 401k. So anyway, that's just another little something that you can think about in terms of making contributions. So I've run 2 minutes over. We can end it, or I can go on another couple minutes, and I just had a couple of things I want to cover. Do I have 2 minutes of your time?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to be respectful of your time. I want to hit this tax stuff because it's really important. Because part of this planning, now that you will know your cash flow, I got X amount of dollars saved. Not only do you need to figure out, do I pay down my debt, but what tax bucket do I need to contribute to for money going into that stuff? So I want you to think about the three tax baskets. You need money in savings, you need money in long-term stuff, in your 401ks. Now, I would imagine that most of you have 401ks or TSPs or whatever you have that offer both traditional and Roth. Does anybody have a plan that does not allow you to go into a Roth?
Ours is a hybrid, actually. I think I can't remember if it's an employer, one's a Roth and one's a traditional.
Okay.
So
well, let me kind of clarify that. The way that plans are structured, you either have a Roth component or you don't. Okay. Now, legally, employer contributions 100% of the time absolutely have to go into the tax-deferred account. Okay?
the traditional one.
And it's in the traditional, the employer contributions. Now, let's say you want to do $5,000 or $10,000 a year, whatever you want to do. Okay? You have the choice of doing 100% traditional, 100% Roth, or some combination in between. So if you put $10,000 into your Roth 401k and the employer matches you, that employer match will go into the traditional. So you will technically have two buckets of money. So if you want to kind of split the difference, let's say you're doing 5% and the employer's doing 3%, you could do 3% in a Roth, 2% in traditional with the employer match. That's 5%. No, you do the math. So actually you could do, anyway, you do whatever you want to do. But the point is that you can do any combination of percentages to the Roth and traditional. The employer contribution will always go into the traditional. Okay, an important aspect. Okay, let's talk about big picture kind of. So I went over very quickly how to fill out the spreadsheets. What you guys need to do is, after a cup of coffee when the phone's not ringing and you're relaxed, is to fill out these spreadsheets, especially the income and expense. The income expenses is the most important because that shows what your cash flow is. Okay? Once you know the cash flow, it's like, okay, now let's look at my RFactor questionnaire. Let's see where that money should go. Does that make sense? So, macro kind of planning stuff right here. I'm going to pause for questions.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Could you just repeat what sort of accounts fall under qualified?
Okay, so qualified, think about it this way. Qualified stands for a current year, qualifies for a current year tax deduction. So a qualified account would be, you just want to jot this down on your handouts or wherever on your computer. Qualified account would be an IRA, be a 401k, any company retirement plan, and there's a bunch of them. You have 401ks, 403bs, you have simple plans, you have SEPs, you have KIOs, you have 457s. The most common is a 401k and a 403b.
I see, but the two Roth tabs are for Roth accounts specifically.
Correct.
Otherwise, everything else.
Right. So yeah, the question is on your spreadsheets, which is a great question. I actually have 4 different tabs for tax-free. I got Roth, and again, you can title them any way you want to. But let's say you had a Roth 401k and you also had a Roth IRA. So let's say you've got Fidelity Roth IRA. Okay, so you can put that in there, and let's say I got a target date fund, I got $6,000 in that. Okay, when I go back to, and by the way, I have a couple other fields right here. I got tax-free 1, tax-free 2. So I just make examples. So if you've got municipal bonds, that would fall in that category. So if I go back to Matrix right here, you're going to see that I just added this Fidelity Roth IRA right here, and there's the $6,000 because it's going to be in equities. That's the cool thing about these spreadsheets, is that as we populate other tabs, they automatically populate the matrix. So technically I have 4 different fields for income tax free. One other thing too I want to point out, okay, has anybody heard of the concept of using permanent life insurance as an investment? Has anybody heard of that before? Okay, it's been around for 100 years or more. Okay, and let me explain why this happens. So if you buy a permanent life insurance plan, you have the cost of insurance, and you also have the cost of the actual premiums. The premiums are higher than the cost of insurance, so that amount right there goes into the cash value, and it grows on a tax-free basis. If you have a universal life or a whole life policy, it grows at a consistent interest rate. But if you have a variable universal life, you can choose, just like a 401k, how that's invested. So you can actually use life insurance not only to pay a death benefit, but also to kind of build that cash value. So come retirement time, you can take money out of it on a tax-free basis. Pretty cool. And we actually use cash value life insurance and deferred non-compensation plans, or like executive plans for companies. But I've got a bunch of clients that will actually use their life insurance cash value as a supplemental retirement plan. So it's just a neat little kind of planning thing to kind of keep in mind with. What other questions?
Where do savings bonds go?
Savings bonds. I would put that in non-qualified. So I would literally type in savings, or yes, savings, whatever. Bonds. Okay. I put it right here. Again, by the way, I met with a client just last week that has savings bonds, and they were doing it like incredibly well. I mean, she bought them years ago, but I mean, when you add it up, she was making like 4.38% on a freaking savings bond. Oh my God, I mean, that's awesome. Considering that's like something you never even think about. It's like a freaking savings bond, but they can do fairly well over time. So anyway, that's where you put it.
Are they fixed, or which one? Which column do they go under?
They would go under fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why fixed?
Because fixed is a generic term for fixed income.
Okay.
So cash would be an actual savings account, or CDs, or cash equivalents. Money markets would be into cash. So anything that I should probably put examples of cash. So cash would be literally cash, savings accounts, CDs, because that's a cash equivalent, and money markets. Fixed accounts would be savings accounts. Thank you so much for coming. Before you leave, let me say one thing. If you could fill out the evaluation.
Oh, I already.
Oh, good. And the second thing is, this is a perfect place for this, you got to go. You guys done a lot of work tonight. And so here's the thing. And here's my offer to you guys if you choose to take me up on it. If you guys fill out your RFactor questionnaire, which you did, And if you actually complete your financial spreadsheets, which I have confidence that you'll do that, I'll spend an hour of my time with you to go over that and answer any question that you have, to review this stuff. Again, I'm not trying to push myself or sell you a product. It's part of my thing as SOFA is to at least give everybody here who comes to a workshop the opportunity to kind of sit down and talk to, basically it's a one-on-one session, and I'm not charging my $150 an hour. But I'm willing to give you an hour of my time if you guys are willing to do your part and get this stuff together. And if you want to take, if you want to take advantage of that, just check on the evaluation that, you want me to, unless you wanted to do a meeting. Again, it is strictly a one-on-one where I'll review stuff with you and answer any questions that you have. And what I do is that I actually create a summary letter, say this is what we talked about. And I'm going to first talk to you about your goals and values from your RFactor questionnaire. And I'm going to have you email me your spreadsheets, and we're going to go and I'm going to fill them out. I'm going to add stuff, and I'm going to make observations, recommendations, so you'll actually have a letter that summarizes that, and then I will email you back your spreadsheets that we updated. And from there, you do whatever you want to do. But at least I want to make sure that you take these concepts and apply them to your life, because this is all great, but if you don't take the next step to actually do something with it, you're no better off. Would you agree with that? Anybody would like to take me up on my offer? Just show of hands. Does anybody? Okay. So just check that on the evaluation. I'm happy to stay a little longer and answer questions, but I just wanted to at least mention that because I know it's 13 minutes after 8, and I know people want to get home and have some dinner. So anyway, so if you guys maybe could just kind of fill out the evaluation, just take a couple minutes of that, and then I'll hang out for a little bit and answer any questions that you have. But you guys have been a great group, the most quiet group I've ever been in front of in my many years in the business.
Just hardworking young professionals. Tired from a long day.
Okay, Michael Landry in cyberspace. You've been very quiet. Do you have any questions for me? You can unmute, we can hear you, but the offer goes to you as well. I do a lot of go-to meetings with people, so if you want to do a go-to meeting, we could do that, or figure out a way to go about that. So you're good. Can you get a copy of the slides or the eval? Yes. So Michael, do this. Go to my website, which is, I'm sorry, this little thing is in the way. Go to contact and send me an email right here and just say, Jim, send me whatever you're requesting and I'll send you an email probably tomorrow morning. But yeah, just send me an email and I will send you anything you want. Now let's see. Okay, cool. Yeah, and actually if you could fill out the evaluation too, that would be really helpful. But anyway, Michael, I want to thank you for attending, and everybody else here. I'm happy to hang out for another few minutes until I pass out from hunger and dehydration, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be like Jim Cramer, this is the lightning round.
I just started a new job, and so when I'm thinking about my 401ks for my old job and new job, they have it at different institutions.
Yep.
Is there a benefit of rolling over or keeping separate?
It's funny you should ask. So you have 3 options with the 401k. Option 1, leave it where it is, and let's say sometimes if you have, well, I want to ask you how much you have in there. If you have less than $1,000, typically they can force you out and just write you a check If that happens, you have 60 days to roll that money into an IRA or the other 401k, or else it'll be taxed as ordinary income, and you have to pay the 10% penalty. So if you have less than $1,000, they can force you out and write you a check. Okay. If you have 5,000, it's a little bit more difficult. They can write you a letter and say, hey, please move this. Or if you have more than 5,000, I'm not sure if they can force you out. So that's the deal if you want to leave it there. Okay. Second option is that if you have a 401k and an actual 401k, and then the next employer is a 401k, not a simple plan, not a SEP, you can roll it over to the new employer. Okay. Third option is that you can roll it over to a IRA rollover account. The advantage, what I typically recommend is that you roll it over to an IRA, because you have access to so many really, really low cost investments that there's really, again, unless the 401k advisor does exactly what I do, which I kind of doubt it, there's not the expenses that are going to be in the 401k are going to be higher than what you get in the Vanguard no-load mutual fund. So if you have a small amount of money, you can go into a target date fund, asset allocation fund. If you send me an email or we talk, I can give you a recommendation on what to do right there. You also see Raymond James. So is that an IRA account?
I have, it's a rock.
Okay. So here's the question. Is the old 401k in a Roth or a traditional?
I believe traditional.
Okay. So, which I'm glad that you said that, because you cannot technically, you cannot roll a traditional over to a Roth without paying taxes on it. So I would not do that. What I would do is that I would roll the money over to a rollover IRA, and I can give you some recommendations on where and how to do that. When I was talking to Amit, we talked about like TD Ameritrade. Again, I'm not endorsing TD Ameritrade. The reason why I like TD Ameritrade is they have lots and lots of commission-free ETFs and mutual funds. And plus they have, and let me ask you this, do you have any interest in learning how to really invest your money?
I think I have an interest. I would definitely need help.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked the question is that if you open up an account at TD Ameritrade, you can download this cool Thinkorswim software, which is what I use professionally to manage lots of money. And they also have, TD Ameritrade bought Invest Tools, which is a whole investment education program. And I attend a bunch of their stuff. They got really good, one thing about investing is that you never, ever, ever stop learning. And you do not know it all. There's always somebody who has a different way of looking at things and a different way of interpreting stuff.
If we wanted to learn a little bit more about that on our own, like what are good resources?
One thing, I'm going to be setting up on my top front burner. I'm putting together a number of investment seminars strictly for nice people like you who are smart but don't necessarily have the knowledge or experience and resources. That would be, so hang tight.
Okay.
Any
other questions?
I have a similar question. So I'm a government contractor, and so I've been in my current job for 2 years, and I'm on my current employer. I had an IRA with one of them, but the new one has a not quite as great 401k. But in terms of like what to do with the old money, I have just left it there for now.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a simple IRA. So would your advice be different with a simple IRA?
Yeah, see,
from a 401k?
this is where it's tricky, okay?
Yeah.
And this is where you're going to have an issue. This is why, the reason why I say this is because you cannot roll a simple plan to a 401k.
Exactly, which is why I didn't touch it.
What you can do though, again, the three options still are the same.
Okay.
The quick recommendation is to roll it over into an IRA rollover account. Okay? Because especially the work that you're in, this is going to be a common occurrence.
Yeah, which is, yeah.
So what you want to, and which is going to make it easy, because if you have a rollover IRA managed the way that you like, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, just everybody's leaving their evaluations. Okay, great, thank you. As that rollover happens, because what happens is that, and you may have already done this, is that you ask for the distribution paperwork from the old 401k, and they say, well, where do you want the money to be sent to? And you say, I want to go to this account right here. So I would definitely do an IRA rollover account.
Okay.
The main question that you're going to have to figure out is like, how do you want that money managed? So as I typically say is that, you know, for under $50,000, I mean, that's my minimum to manage money. I typically, so there's a couple things. One is Vanguard. Another thing is that if you do a Google search for the Schwab Intelligent Portfolios, this is also good. We custodian our money at Schwab.
Okay.
And so I'm very, very familiar with their ETFs. So this is an all ETF, professionally managed portfolio that they charge you 25 basis points, which is really cheap. So the minimum to put your money here is $5,000.
Okay.
Again, I'm not recommending Schwab. I'm just saying that these are some of the options that you have available. And I moved $5,000 of my own money in my own Roth IRA right before this year, so I wanted to see how the performance was doing. It's actually held up pretty well. I tend to be more of a tactical money manager, and they're much more long-term. But what I like about what they've done is that they have very, very low-cost ETFs, and it's actually held up very well year to date. And so I'm in a growth portfolio, which is an 80, well, actually it's probably 75-25. And it's certainly right in line with the benchmarks. I think year to date it's up roughly 4.5%, which is roughly what the S&P has done. So Schwab Intelligent Portfolios, again, you can go to Vanguard. Again, I'm a big fan of TD Ameritrade because you can just buy, you have set up an IRA rollover account and you buy whatever you want. So, you know, you can buy low-cost, you know, ETFs, you can buy mutual funds, they have a bunch of commission-free stuff. And so if you do decide that you want to buy and sell, you're not going to get dinged with a, you know, $5 to $9 ticket charge. Any other questions? Yes.
So with inheritance tax, that can be a big bummer. Obviously, there's kind of like double taxation. So do you have any recommendations about like how to approach that? It's even because sometimes you can actually kind of like go in a hole.
Yeah, so I am not a certified accountant. I cannot give you tax advice. However, the best thing I can do is recommend that you work with a CPA or an accountant that can give you good tax advice on that. That's just one area that I can't make any recommendations. But the best recommendation I can give is what I would do myself is that I would consult my own accountant about that. And then if you do have a tax bill, then the question is that you need to kind of set some aside to pay it. With inheritance tax, I mean, there's a thing called a stretch IRA. But typically you have to, what a stretch IRA is that You inherit money, but you actually pay the tax over your lifetime. That is one thing you can do. So talk to your accountant about a stretch IRA. It may or may not be set up that way. The other thing is that you may have to pay for it over a 5-year period. So just ask about, are there ways that you can spread the payments out over time versus paying it all in one lump sum? That would be, that's about all advice I can give you on that. Anybody else? But you guys are the hardcore people.
I do have one very quick question. It's also about filling out the spreadsheet.
Yep.
So let's say I have a Roth 401k, and within that I have some equities and income. I would split that in here between fixed and equities, right?
Right.
Even though the equities aren't actually as liquid.
Correct.
As actual.
And where it gets tricky is that, let's say you have an asset allocation fund or a target date fund. Typically I put that in equities. Let's say it's an 80-20, 80 stock, 20% bond.
Right.
I'll just put that in equities. I'm not that concerned about it.
Okay.
You know, if the majority of your asset allocation fund is in equities, put it in equities. I would just not, you know, put it in that round. Yeah. The asset allocation is more for your risk tolerance, you know, how much risk you're taking. So it's not as important. Thank you so much. Any questions?
I'll email them to you when I go through.
Okay.
the
Good.
Thank you so much, Jim. This is really empowering.
Was it? Well, good. I like you using the word empowering because that's exactly what it's designed to do.
Having a spreadsheet in my hands that I know how to use or know how to use.
Yeah. So go back to my website, watch the video, and just pause, rewind. You know, just like if you skip over stuff that you don't need, just fast forward. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully this was helpful.